Well, this wasn't how I expected the June Largemouth Challenge to go. The challenge was a 10-day online tournament open to anglers across Canada, with everyone chasing largemouth bass and submitting their best catches during the window. My goal was to explore 5 different New Brunswick fisheries, adapt to new water, and see if I could compete against anglers from across the country. But halfway through the challenge, one mistake in my kayak changed everything. In seconds, I went from chasing bass to fighting to save myself, my kayak, and my gear. This is the Kayak Bass Canada June Largemouth Challenge. Grand Falls Flowage was a familiar stop on this challenge, but with a catch. We could only fish the Canadian side of the system. That meant a much smaller piece of water was available to explore. Having some history here gave me a starting point, but the fish still had to cooperate. With the conditions today being overcast and slightly windy, I thought I'd go with a spinnerbait to start things off with a paddle tail trailer.
Hit the tail off the bastard.
And there we go. There's our first fish of the challenge. Not a huge one, but at least we're on the board.
Not big, but we'll measure them. Number one for today.
With limited water to fish, I focused on the best looking weed beds along the Canadian shoreline, slowing down and making every cast count. With the clouds increasingly growing darker and the wind steadily increasing, keeping the kayak on the weed edges was becoming more of a bigger challenge. Boat control was just as important as lure selection. As the wind continued to build, I moved into a shallow bay where I could use my power pole to hold position. I was working a swim jig through the heavier cover. out the belly on this one. This fish had me really wrapped up in the weeds. I had to lift up the power pole and make my way over to try to fish it out. With the wind only getting stronger, I called it a day. A limit and a few extra fish made for a solid start to the 10-day challenge. My second stop was Woodland Flowage, another boundary fishery where I was limited to the Canadian side. I had also forgotten my GoPro camera arm, so most of the day was filmed with my chest mount, leaving me with limited footage, but the fishing continued. My early catches seem to be running rather small. Sometimes the best moments never make it to film. I did manage to upgrade 2 fish before the day was over, but by then my GoPro battery had given up, leaving those catches to memory. Next up was Kayak, one of New Brunswick's premier largemouth destinations. This stop served a dual purpose: find a few upgrades for the June challenge while also scouting for the upcoming hook and paddle tournament. With 2 goals on the line, every fish and every piece of information was important. The fish seemed to be setting up on the outside weed edges, and a swim jig and chatterbait proved to be the right tools for the job. Before long, that pattern paid off with a solid largemouth and welcome upgrade to my challenge total. Although not part of the challenge, this feisty smallmouth would have been nice to have landed. Kayak was starting to reveal its potential. Staying with the same pattern, I connected with another quality largemouth that would push my challenge total even higher.
See you in the house. I don't think so.
Another nice Mactaquac largemouth, but not quite big enough to make the cut. After spending some time on some different waters, the challenge brought me back closer to home to Trout Lake, just beside Lake Utopia. I knew this area fairly well and was confident that I could get into some largemouth here. What I learned was that kayak fishing can change in an instant. One mistake while on the water turned a normal day of fishing into a situation I won't soon forget. The actual moment it happened was pretty simple. I just stowed my paddle and was reaching behind me to get my anchor ready. While doing that, I leaned over farther than I realized, and before I knew it, I was past the point of recovery. It was at that point there was no saving it. The kayak was going over, and I was going for an unexpected swim. As the kayak went over, several pieces of gear went with it. 2 rods and reel combos, my terminal tackle bag, my net, and a handful of soft plastics all disappeared beneath the surface. Thankfully, I was wearing my PFD, which made the situation much safer and allowed me to focus on getting myself and the kayak under control. I was able to recover my terminal tackle bag and my spinning combo, but unfortunately my net and one of my older bait casting combos were never found and are still resting somewhere on the bottom of Trout Lake. The saving grace was that my 2 more expensive bait casting setups had been strapped securely to the kayak hull and stayed with me throughout the entire ordeal. It was a good reminder that when kayak fishing, always wear your PFD and secure your gear properly. It can make all the difference.
Fuck me.
After the incident at Trout Lake, it was time to get back on the water and finish the challenge. The next stop brought me to Lake Wauklahegan, and it felt good to be back on the stability and confidence of the Old Town autopilot. With a few lessons learned and a renewed respect for securing my gear, I was ready to put the focus back where it belonged, finding largemouth bass. Lake Wauklahegan is one of those fisheries where you never really know what's going to bite. It's a fun multi-species lake with some quality largemouth bass swimming around. The game plan was to stay close to shore, picking apart docks and cover with a Nico rig, while also covering water with a swim jig through the thicker vegetation. The challenge was finding the right areas and triggering those fish to bite. Losing gear is never fun, but every cloud has a silver lining. If you're going to replace something, you may as well upgrade it. The Shimano SLX DC was a pretty good consolation prize and a great addition to my arsenal.
There we go. Alright, let's leave it at bigger than 15. Nice fish there. Yeah, he's only 14. Only 15.
The action was consistent at Lake Waukellahegan. I was catching fish and the pattern was producing, but I still hadn't found the size of largemouth I needed to make an upgrade. The bites were there, now I just needed one of the better fish to show up.
That's a nice bass. That'll kick out one of those 16s.
Finally, the fish I was looking for showed up. This largemouth was big enough to make the cut and give me an upgrade that I'd been searching for.
Wait till that knocks out. I don't think he's big enough to beat 16, but we'll take a look. No, 15 and a half.
Lake Waukewahigan held the most fish I encountered during the challenge. Even when they weren't big enough to upgrade, the steady action made it one of the most enjoyable stops for the trip.
Alright.
With just one day left, I made my way back to the Grand Falls flowage, hoping to find one final upgrade and finish the challenge on a high note.
Not quite big enough for me. Just shy of 16.
It was a completely different fishery than I'd seen on my last visit here. The wind had disappeared, leaving calm, clear conditions. Easier on the kayak, yes, but not always easier on the fishing. Calm water often means more wary bass, so each presentation had to be a bit more precise and subtle. The morning started off much slower than my first trip here to the Grand Falls flowage. While I caught a few fish, none were big enough to replace the ones already on my leaderboard. Around noon, though, everything changed. The wind started to build, and with it, the bigger fish seemed to turn on. I managed to upgrade 2 fish, 16 and 3/4 inch largemouth and another 18-inch largemouth. This gave my challenge a boost. Unfortunately, just as the bite picked up, my GoPro overheated and shut down, so neither of those upgrades made it onto camera. It's disappointing, and that sometimes happens with GoPros, especially in the warm weather. With that, the June largemouth challenge came to an end. After exploring 5 different fisheries across New Brunswick, I finished with 85.75 inches, earning a 9th place finish. But for me, this challenge was about more than just the final standings. It was an opportunity to explore new waters, experience what makes each fishery unique, and enjoy everything the province has to offer. Every stop brought different conditions, different challenges, and different opportunities to learn, and that's what makes this adventure so memorable. Largemouth bass are becoming more established in parts of New Brunswick, and I know that comes with different opinions. Personally, I really enjoy targeting them. While smallmouth are known for their speed, long runs, and incredible aerial displays, largemouth offer a completely different experience. They hit hard, they use cover to their advantage, and those explosive strikes around weeds, docks, and structures are incredibly exciting. Both species are amazing sport fish in their own way, and that's part of what makes bass fishing so much fun. If you've never spent a day chasing largemouth in New Brunswick, I'd encourage you to give it a try. You might discover a new favorite way to enjoy the outdoors and explore some incredible fisheries along the way. Thanks for joining me on this adventure. I appreciate you coming along for the journey, and I'll see you on the next one.